The wind roared that night, battering Oakhaven with a storm that turned streets into rivers. Few dared venture out, but something else braved the tempest, a navy blue coat, left behind in the warmth of the Griddle diner. It was a favorite, worn and comforting, soon to become the center of a mystery. Oakhaven was a town of routine, where nothing unexplained ever happened, until that night. The coat vanished, presumed lost to the chaos, but its journey was just beginning. The storm raged, and the coat was on a path no one could have predicted. Mark Henderson, craving routine comfort, braved the storm for dinner at the Griddle. He hung his navy coat on the hook, ordered his usual, and lost himself in the diner's warmth. Distracted by the worsening weather, he left without his coat, only realizing miles later. Annoyed, he decided to retrieve it in the morning, certain it would be safe. But the coat had other plans, or perhaps something else did. The night was far from over for that simple woolen garment. Morning brought calm, but Mark's annoyance lingered. Until he opened his door. There, neatly folded and impossibly dry, was his coat. The diner was miles away. The storm had been relentless. How had it returned? Security footage showed no one. Just the storm. And then suddenly, the coat. No explanation, no note, just an impossible delivery. The ordinary had become extraordinary. The mystery was only beginning. Warnings blared as the storm approached, but Mark couldn't resist the Griddle's comfort. Inside, he hung his coat and settled in, the diner a fragile refuge from the gathering tempest. The first flickers of the storm's power danced across the windows. Patrons grew uneasy, the wind's howl rising outside. Mark's coat hung quietly, unnoticed as the world outside braced for chaos. The true storm was about to begin. Mark finished his meal, paid, and braced himself for the storm outside. In his rush, he left his coat behind, forgotten on the hook. The wind and rain assaulted him as he hurried to his car, the coat left alone in the diner. It was a simple mistake, but one that would unravel the ordinary. The coat remained a silent witness to the storm's fury. Or so it seemed. Mark's drive home was a battle. Wind, rain, and darkness turning Oakhaven into a nightmare. Only as he neared home did he remember the coat, now unreachable in the chaos. He resigned himself to retrieving it later, certain it would be safe. Inside he dried off, shaken by the storm's violence. The coat was a minor loss, or so he thought, but its adventure was just beginning. The impossible was already in motion. Back at the Griddle, the last of the hardy customers had finally braved the storm and departed. Betty and the cook, a stoic man named Sal, were all that remained. They moved with practiced efficiency, cleaning, stacking chairs, eager to lock up and head for the safety of their own homes. The wind hammered against the building, making the windows rattle in their frames. The lights continued to flicker ominously, threatening to plunge them into darkness at any moment. Their conversation was sparse, focused on the task at hand, their shared anxiety a palpable presence in the emptying diner. Did Betty notice the lone coat still hanging on the hook in Mark's booth? Perhaps she did. A fleeting glance, maybe a mental note to put it in the lost and found later. Or perhaps in the rush to close, with the storm demanding all her attention, it simply blended into the shadows of the quiet corner. Sal, wiping down the grill, certainly wouldn't have seen it. Their minds were on downed power lines, flooded streets, the journey that lay ahead of them. A forgotten coat was the least of their worries on a night like this. Soon, the last light in the Griddle was extinguished. The close sign was flipped, the door double-locked against the tempest. Darkness enveloped the diner's interior, a stark contrast to the warm glow it had offered just an hour before. Only the relentless, deafening roar of the wind and rain filled the space now. The navy blue coat hung motionless on its brass hook, an inanimate object, left behind, or was it? In the deep, impenetrable blackness of the deserted diner, it waited, a silent witness to the storm's fury. The hours of that long night crawled by. The storm raged outside, a symphony of destruction. Trees fell, power grids failed. Oakhaven was battered relentlessly by wind and water. Inside the cold, dark shell of the Griddle, the coat remained. Or did it? Was it truly alone? Did some unseen force visit that silent space? Was it touched? Was it moved? No human eyes were there to see, no ears to hear. The coat, a simple woolen garment, was at the very heart of a deepening mystery, its solitary vigil the prelude to an impossible return. The sun rose over Oakhaven, painting the storm-ravaged town in hues of pale gold. Mark Henderson stirred, the memory of the previous night's tempest still vivid. He figured he'd call the Griddle about his forgotten coat. So he shuffled towards his front door, bracing himself for the damp chill. He reached for the doorknob, all set to retrieve the newspaper. But nothing could have prepared him for what lay there. His eyes widened. It was his coat from the diner. For a long moment, Mark simply stared, his mind struggling to process the impossible image. It was neatly folded as if placed by a careful, unseen valet. Confusion clouded his thoughts. The world around him was a testament to the storm's fury. Yet here was his coat. Had he dreamt leaving it? A wave of unease washed over him. He scanned the street. Empty. Just the quiet aftermath of the storm and this impossible object on his porch. How? Mark knelt, a trembling hand reaching for the folded garment. The wool felt familiar yet alien. He expected it soaked, smelling of the storm. He'd left it in a town besieged by torrential rain. Astonishingly, the coat was dry. Perfectly, impossibly dry. No scent of the storm, only his own, and faint diner coffee. The dryness was baffling. Delivered by whom? How could it have traversed that storm unscathed? The questions multiplied, creating a knot of impossibility. It felt like a contradiction of physical laws. A shiver traced his spine. Mark carried the coat inside, his mind still reeling. He placed it on the kitchen table, an ordinary object now imbued with an extraordinary aura of mystery. His wife, Sarah, came downstairs, drawn by the unusual silence. She saw the coat, then Mark's pale, bewildered face. "Your coat!" she exclaimed, a note of relief in her voice. "You went back for it this morning? I thought you said the roads were still bad." Her assumption, so logical, so normal, only highlighted the utter strangeness of the situation. How could he even begin to explain? "I didn't go back for it, Sarah," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was on the porch, folded, and it's completely dry." He watched her expression shift from mild surprise to confusion, then to a dawning skepticism. She walked over to the table, touched the coat hesitantly, much like he had done. Her brow furrowed. "Dry?" she repeated, her fingers testing the woolen fabric. "But the storm last night, how could it be dry?" She looked from the coat to him, searching his face for an answer he didn't possess. They stood there for several minutes, the silence in the kitchen thick with unspoken questions. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, began to offer possibilities. Maybe one of the staff from the diner lives nearby and they dropped it off early this morning, covering it well? But even as she said it, the explanation felt thin. Why so early? Why no knock? And how could it be so perfectly dry after such a night? And why fold it so meticulously? Mark added, voicing the thought that echoed in both their minds. The neatness felt almost ritualistic, unnervingly deliberate. The initial relief of finding the coat was quickly being replaced by a growing sense of unease, a subtle fear that gnawed at the edges of their understanding. They were sensible people, not prone to flights of fancy. Yet, the evidence before them defied easy dismissal. "This is weird, Mark," Sarah finally conceded, her voice hushed. "Really weird." The coat sat on their kitchen table, a silent testament to an event that had no logical place in their well-ordered lives. The mystery was no longer just Mark's, it had seeped into the very fabric of their home. A sudden thought sparked in Mark's mind. The security camera. He'd installed it just a few months prior, a small, discreet device aimed at his front porch and walkway. It recorded continuously. If someone had delivered the coat, the camera would have captured them. A surge of hope, a chance for a rational explanation, propelled him towards his computer. "The security footage," he announced to Sarah, a newfound urgency in his voice. "It must have caught something. It has to have." He felt a desperate need for a mundane answer, for this unsettling event to be grounded in reality. He pulled up the software, his fingers flying across the keyboard, navigating to the recordings from the previous night and early morning. Sarah stood behind him, peering over his shoulder, her anxiety mirroring his own. The timeline appeared on the screen, a visual representation of the hours that had passed. He started the playback from well before dawn, watching the storm rage on the small screen. The wind howled through the computer speakers, the rain lashed the virtual lens, trees swayed violently. His porch was empty save for the driving rain. They watched, minute by painstaking minute. Hours of footage scrolled by. The storm slowly abated as dawn approached. The light changed. The rain softened to a drizzle, then stopped. Still, the porch remained empty. Mark fast-forwarded, then slowed it down again, his eyes scanning every pixel, every shadow. There was no sign of movement, no approaching figure, no vehicle pulling up to the curb. Nothing. Then between one frame and the next, in a section they replayed countless times, the coat was suddenly there. One moment, an empty wet porch. The next, a neatly folded navy blue coat, as if it had materialized out of thin air. A heavy silence descended in the room, broken only by the hum of the computer. Mark leaned back in his chair, a feeling of profound disbelief washing over him. Sarah gasped softly. The camera, their unblinking electronic witness, had offered no explanation. Instead, it had deepened the mystery, transforming it from merely strange to utterly inexplicable. There was no person, no animal, no discernible delivery. The footage was clear, unbroken. The coat had simply appeared. The rational explanation they had desperately sought had vanished, leaving only a chilling, impossible void. The absence of any evidence on the security footage hung heavy in the air. It was one thing to find the coat inexplicably on the porch. It was another entirely to have visual confirmation that no one, and nothing visible, had placed it there. Mark felt a prickle of something akin to fear, a primal response to an event that defied all known rules of the world. Sarah, usually so grounded, looked pale and shaken. The neat, ordinary confines of their suburban home suddenly felt less secure, as if the boundaries of reality itself had become porous and unreliable. They replayed the crucial segment of the footage again and again. Each viewing yielded the same baffling result. The empty porch, then the coat, no transition, no clue. Mark zoomed in, enhanced the image, desperately searching for any anomaly, any flicker or distortion that might offer a hint. But the recording was maddeningly clear. The storm had been real. The porch was undeniably his. And the coat's appearance was a silent, stark impossibility captured in digital clarity. The logical framework they used to understand the world was fracturing under the weight of this single, inexplicable event. "What does this mean?" Sarah finally whispered, her voice betraying her unease. Mark had no answer. The possibilities that flickered through his mind were increasingly outlandish, venturing into territories he usually dismissed as fiction. A prank seemed almost laughably inadequate now. The precision, the dryness, the lack of any trace. It was too perfect, too clean. Could someone have bypassed the camera's view? Perhaps from the side, but the angles were good, covering all reasonable approaches. And still the dryness remained the ultimate, baffling contradiction. The coat, still resting on the kitchen table, seemed to watch them, a silent harbinger of the unknown. The initial shock was beginning to morph into a creeping dread. This wasn't just a lost and found item with a strange story. This felt different, older, more significant, as if they had brushed up against something that operated outside the normal parameters of life. The mystery of the coat that walked home alone was no longer a curious puzzle. It was becoming a shadow, stretching long and cold into the heart of their everyday existence, leaving them with a profound sense of vulnerability. The decision to involve the authorities wasn't easy. What would he report? A coat, found mysteriously dry and folded on his porch. He imagined the dispatcher's impatience, a waste of police time. Yet the inexplicable dryness and the chilling void on the security footage gnawed at him. Sarah worried, "They'll think we're crazy." Ultimately, the security footage tipped the scales. It felt like a tear in their understood world. Mark picked up the phone, rehearsing his opening lines. He began his strange tale, describing the diner, the storm, the coat's reappearance, and the impossible dryness. To his surprise, the dispatcher, intrigued by the video evidence, said she would send an officer. Mark hung up, Now they had to convince a seasoned officer that something inexplicable had occurred. Officer Miller arrived. He listened as Mark recounted the events. Mark emphasized the storm, the distance, and the pristine condition of the coat. Miller suggested someone from the diner might have returned it. Mark revealed they had security footage showing nothing. This piqued Miller's interest. They watched the recording showing the storm and the coat's sudden appearance. Miller, intrigued, replayed the footage. The initial skepticism gave way to bafflement. Miller acknowledged the unusual situation. The investigation was just beginning. Officer Miller and Detective Peterson headed to the Griddle. If the coat was from there, the staff were key. The diner was bustling. Betty, the waitress, remembered Mark leaving the night before as the storm raged. She recalled seeing a dark coat on the hook after he left, but couldn't remember what happened to it. Sal, the cook, was no help. Detective Peterson pressed, but Betty couldn't recall anyone else noticing the coat. The lost and found held only a glove and sunglasses. The coat hadn't passed through there. The diner's old security camera only covered the register. Another dead end. The staff were cooperative but puzzled by the coat's reappearance. The Griddle offered no answers. The investigation expanded to the neighborhood. Detective Peterson assigned Officer Miller to canvass the houses. Maybe a neighbor had seen something amiss. It was standard procedure, but Oakhaven kept its secrets well. The few who were interviewed offered nothing concrete. No one had witnessed anything. Detective Peterson made inquiries, but there were no similar reports. The case of the returned coat was unique. There were no precedents. The investigation was hitting a wall. They had no suspect, no motive, no explanation. The file remained open, but leads had dwindled. The coat had eluded explanation, leaving behind a town with more questions than answers. When logic crumbles, the mind wanders into the unknown. The Hendersons, the police, and the entire town of Oakhaven found themselves on this precipice. It was this void, this refusal of facts to align with reason, that opened the door to whispers of the unexplained. Could it have been something otherworldly? Some townsfolk spoke of spirits, of unseen hands capable of impossible feats. The coat, they mused, might have been touched by such a presence. Why Mark Henderson? Why his coat? If an otherworldly force was at play, what was its purpose? These questions hung heavy, unanswerable, a testament to the human need to find meaning. The coat remained a silent, woolen enigma. If not ghosts, then who? Could this be an elaborate prank? Someone would have had to retrieve the coat, unseen, transport it through the storm, bypass the security camera, and vanish. This was no impulsive act, but a chilling level of planning. Was it someone holding a bizarre grudge or strange affection? The more one considered it, the less it seemed like a joke. Or was it an act of perplexing kindness? If it was a prank, what was the punchline? If kindness, why the secrecy? The silence was deafening. In the desperate search for answers, even the most fundamental assumptions had to be questioned. Could Mark himself have been mistaken? What about the security camera? Could it have malfunctioned? Officer Miller and Detective Peterson examined the footage timestamp, but the recording appeared seamless. Then, one might venture into the realm of truly bizarre, almost science fiction-like natural phenomena. This was the territory of wild speculation. The human mind, faced with a void, abhors a vacuum. Was it possible that the sheer strangeness of the event was causing everyone to overthink? The mystery remained stubbornly, infuriatingly intact. Despite theories from the ghostly to the granular, none explained the coat's return. The paranormal lacked proof, while human agency faced logistical impossibilities. Even grasping at glitches felt like defeat. The coat defied them all, a monument to the inexplicable. For Mark and Sarah, life was irrevocably altered. The story blossomed into a local legend in Oakhaven. The police file remained open, a testament to a puzzle that stumped the best. Perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved, reminding us of the vast unknown. It was a question mark woven into the fabric of reality, leaving an unsettling silence. Months drifted by after the coat's return. The police shelved the investigation, their leads gone. The coat lay in the attic, a relic of that night. One autumn afternoon, Sarah decided to clean it. Unfolding it, she noticed a tiny, unusual thread woven into the seam. It had a strange, almost metallic sheen catching the light. Sarah gasped. This was tangible, a deliberate addition. She called Mark, who hurried to the attic. Together they examined the thread. This tiny fiber changed everything, pulling the mystery from the paranormal into human intervention. Was it a signature? A marker? The coat now felt subtly altered. The silence seemed like a carefully constructed void. The discovery of the metallic thread sent a jolt through the Hendersons and the Oakhaven Police Department. Detective Peterson remembered the baffling case. Mark and Sarah presented the coat, pointing out the shimmering fiber. The thread was extracted and examined under a microscope. It wasn't a natural fiber nor any known synthetic. It seemed to be a composite material with unusual conductive properties that baffled the local lab. Where had it come from? Detective Peterson reopened the file, revisiting the security footage. If someone possessed the technology to create such a unique fiber, perhaps they also possessed the means to edit reality. The mystery of the coat had evolved into an unseen, highly skilled entity capable of actions that bordered on the futuristic. The strange metallic fiber served only to drag the Hendersons and the investigators deeper into the labyrinth. This thread spoke of resources, of knowledge, of a level of planning that was far more unsettling. The question of how became inextricably linked to a far more disturbing who and why. These facts now seemed less like random elements and more like carefully controlled variables in an experiment they didn't understand. The final twist, this almost invisible fiber, offered no resolution. Oakhaven's legend of the coat that walked home alone gained a new, darker chapter. The coat remained a symbol of profound, unsettling ignorance. Years passed, but the mystery of the coat lingered, a persistent echo in the Henderson home. Life returned to familiar rhythms, but unease remained. The coat, unseen, was never truly gone from their minds. It was a testament to a moment when their world tilted, revealing something terrifyingly strange. The police file grew cold, an impossibility made real. That tiny shimmering fiber only deepened the shadows, hinting at a hidden hand. Did it underscore the vastness of their ignorance? The coat became a symbol, a constant reminder of the fragile veil between the known and the unknowable. The ordinary fabric of their lives had been touched by the extraordinary, leaving an indelible mark. The story seeped out, as such stories always do, carried on whispers and shared over coffee at the Griddle, now forever linked to the Enigma. It flowed through Oakhaven like an underground stream, surfacing in hushed conversations. The coat that walked home alone became Oakhaven's own peculiar ghost story, a piece of modern folklore. Each telling added a new flourish. Some dismissed it, yet their eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. The tale became a part of Oakhaven's identity, a unique, unsettling claim to fame. It was a puzzle without a solution, and that perhaps was its enduring power. The coat had been given to the entire town, a shared enigma to ponder. Oakhaven now held a secret, a shiver of the unexplained ran beneath its streets, becoming a legend whispered for generations yet to come. Years have passed, the world has spun on, yet the fundamental question remains: how did the coat, lost in a storm miles away, reappear on Mark Henderson's porch, perfectly dry, meticulously folded? None of the theories have pierced the veil of this enduring enigma. Perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved, to remind us that the map of reality we navigate is far from complete. If something as mundane as a woolen coat can defy the laws of nature and logic so completely, what else is possible? Until something like a coat decides to walk home alone. And so, the final haunting question hangs in the air, as palpable today as it was all those years ago, for reasons we may never, ever comprehend.